community.
Question number 4, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. What is the percentage reduction in foreign policy or diplomatic staff that he set out in his paper to the Cabinet Committee on State Sector Reform and Expenditure Control, dated the 26th of April 2012?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, as a former minister, the member should know that it is normal for Cabinet Committee and Cabinet discussions to take place confidentially. For that reason, if such a paper existed, it would not be in the public interest for me to provide the information he seeks. I understand that yesterday the member released what he asserted to be material from Cabinet Committee papers. If his question refers to those, he will already have the answer he seeks.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, since I already have the answer, why is he slashing 53 foreign policy positions? That's the people who do the diplomatic work, nearly 10% of his diplomatic staff, from the ministry, when his friend, former senior ministry diplomat Charles Finney, said last year there was, quote unquote, already huge staffing gaps in the ministry which required core ministry work to be farmed out to expensive private consultants.
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Mr Speaker, the original ministry proposal was that 64 foreign policy positions would be disestablished. More recent discussions have centred around a number in the mid-50s, although that is still a matter being discussed between the government and the ministry. Were that to be the position where things settled, about half of those positions would be represented by current staff and around half by current vacancies.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker. Notwithstanding his denial on Morning Report this morning, will he acknowledge there is a major morale problem in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs when his ministry's own survey, which I've got in my hand, shows that more and more people are disillusioned and disengaged, significantly more, quote unquote, significantly more than any other state sector organisation, and when last week his important trade negotiation division said that confidence was shot and they can't retain talented people.
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, the member claims to be deeply concerned about staff morale within the ministry and about damage to New Zealand's foreign policy interests from this process. If he wishes to identify the persons responsible, then he just needs to find himself a mirror.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Phil Goff. Order. A point of order has been called. The order. The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, I asked the Minister whether he would acknowledge that there was a significant morale problem within the ministry. He went on then to say that I was responsible for everything. It used to be the Chief Executive Officer, now it's me apparently, but he hasn't answered the question.
It's an interesting point the member raises, because the question asked whether the Minister would acknowledge that there was a significant morale problem, and the Minister in his answer tended to indicate in his answer he doesn't think there is, but if there is, then he blamed the previous minister, and that is an answer. Whether it's a good answer or not is another matter, and the member does have further supplementary. He's a very experienced member, and I'm sure he's capable of pursuing that further. The Honourable Phil Goff.
An answer, but not as we know it. Mr Speaker, my supplementary is this to the Minister. Why is he recommending the closure of the embassy in Stockholm when he said this to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee just months ago, and I quote, Mr Speaker, he said, quote, "We put a high value on those Scandinavian relationships, which is why we did not take the step of closing that post A decision, Mr Speaker, which he said, quote, was the result, a decision not to close the embassy, of the result of careful reflection and consideration. Why has he flip-flopped in a matter of months?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, as I've said on a number of occasions publicly, the question of closure or opening of missions overseas is a matter for the Cabinet. The discussion that took place in the original change document did raise the prospect of changes in Europe, and in the letter on the 22nd of March I canvassed a range of options for the Ministry to advise further on. Those matters are still to come before the Cabinet for a final decision.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Will the Minister admit that he inherited a department that was being properly funded and that foreign aid was heading towards 3.5 of GDP, and that these cuts simply indicate that he has no influence at Cabinet, which begs the question of him, why did he seek the position in the first place?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, I would have used the word lavish to describe the funding when the government came into office, and what I can say is that in 2008 the Minister of Foreign Affairs sought from the then Minister of Finance an extra $212 million a year in 2011-12 terms. In the first year in office as Minister, Sir, I took $115 million off the table, and in the subsequent year a further $20 million, and now we are looking at a further reduction of $24 to $25 million this year, which would still leave over $50 million of the funding advanced by that member as Minister in 2008. And I think I'll stop there, because the Minister of Finance is starting to ask himself whether maybe we should do more.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, in addition to the $9.2 million that he spent on the change process so far this year, is the additional $3.296 million that he's admitted to me will be spent next year on change consultants the total financial cost of the change process that he estimates for next year, including internal staffing costs and redundancy costs? If not, what will be the total cost of this botched process?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, the member's been told before that the figure of $9.2 million is a budget, not an expenditure level to date. What I can say to him is that the manner in which we've tried to assist the Ministry in making some final decisions at an early time is designed to ensure that we can move on to business as usual as quickly as possible and save as much from the change budget as possible. The specific answer to his question can only be given once all of the decisions have been made.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
As the result of the latest changes that he has in his paper, has the Ministry changed the contracts of any of those consultancy firms which he is aware will require compensatory payments to them? If so, what will be the cost of that?
The Honourable Murray McCully.
Speaker, I'm not aware of any arrangements of that sort.
Question number 5, Jamie Lee Ross.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of